first Sunday of Lent in this liturgical cycle C, we find Luke's account of the temptations of Jesus in the desert. There is an interesting difference between Luke's account and Matthew's account, and of course Mark's account. Mark, who wrote first, simply tells us that the Holy Spirit led Jesus to the desert, where he spent 40 days and was tempted. In the case of Matthew, who wrote after Mark, he elaborates those 40 days and what happened to Jesus, and tells us about the 3 temptations from Satan: the conversion of a stone into bread, taking him to the pinnacle of the temple and inviting him to throw himself down because the angels would come and rescue him, and finally, all the kingdoms of earth in exchange of worshipping him. When Luke wrote his gospel, he inverted the order of the last 2 temptations. He tells us first also about the temptation of turning stone into a piece of bread, but then Luke writes about that temptation of worshipping Satan in exchange of all the kingdoms on earth. And he tells us last about the temptation of jumping off the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. Why did Luke make this change? Why did he swap these 2 temptations? Well, there is a very powerful reason. One of the main theological ideas in the writings of Luke, both in the Gospel and in the Acts of the Apostles, is Jerusalem. The Gospel according to Luke begins in Jerusalem when the angel announces Zechariah that he's going to be the father of John the Baptist. It will be Jerusalem where the mystery of redemption will happen. It is in Jerusalem where Jesus will celebrate the Last Supper, where he will be crucified, and where he will resurrect. In the Acts of the Apostles, it will be Jerusalem where Jesus will ascend into heaven, and it will be in Jerusalem where the church will be born in Pentecost. But also, it is Jerusalem where the stories, Luke tells us, always finish. The narrative of the infancy of Jesus finishes in Jerusalem when we see Jesus when he was 12 after he got lost for 3 days, amazing the big scholars in the temple of Jerusalem. The whole Gospel according to Luke is written as a long journey from Galilee to Jerusalem, where the mystery of redemption will happen. Luke inverts the order of the second 2 temptations, so the last one takes place in Jerusalem. That's why, in the case of the account of the temptations of Jesus in the desert, according to Luke, first Satan invited him to turn a stone into a piece of bread, just like Matthew wrote, and then Satan invites Jesus to worship him in exchange of all the kingdoms, and lastly, he takes him to Jerusalem and invites him to throw himself off the pinnacle of the temple. This way, the narrative of the temptations, according to Luke, will have a victorious ending in Jerusalem. That city is so important to Luke and his theology because that is the Messianic city. It is the holy city of God. It is the holy city where redemption takes place. I invite you to read the Gospel Sunday after Sunday and pay attention to these subtle details, because behind them there is always something fascinating to learn. Be passionate about our faith.